Introduction: The Wild West is one of the most iconic periods in American history. Known for its rugged frontier, lawlessness, and legendary figures like cowboys, outlaws, and Native American tribes, the Wild West conjures images of epic shootouts, cattle drives, and gold rushes. But how exactly was the Wild West won? Was it a triumph of American settlers and pioneers, or was it shaped by a complex web of violence, conflict, and government intervention? In this video, we'll explore the real story behind the conquest of the Wild West, a story far more complicated than the Hollywood portrayals we've come to know. The beginning of the Wild West, a land of opportunity. The Wild West, or the American frontier, spanned vast stretches of land west of the Mississippi River, including the Great Plains, the Rocky Mountains, and the deserts of the Southwest. By the early 1800s, much of this land was inhabited by Native American tribes, with little European influence. However, with the rise of American expansionism, the U.S. government began pushing westward. Driven by the belief in manifest destiny, the idea that Americans were destined to expand across the continent and spread their ideals of democracy and civilization. As settlers began to move westward, they faced challenges such as harsh landscapes, extreme weather, and encounters with Native American tribes who had lived in the region for centuries. The frontier was an untamed wilderness, full of both promise and peril. The discovery of gold, the development of railroads, and the promise of fertile land lured thousands of Americans westward in search of a new life. The role of the U.S. government, land grants and military presence. While the allure of the West drew settlers, the role of the U.S. government was crucial in making the Wild West a reality. The government played a significant role in facilitating westward expansion through policies like the Homestead Act of 1862. This act offered 160 acres of land to settlers willing to cultivate it for 5 years. The government also provided military protection to settlers and organized expeditions to explore the West, such as the Lewis and Clark expedition. But the government's influence wasn't always welcomed. Native American tribes had long occupied these lands, and the U.S. government's policies toward them were often violent and oppressive. The government's military presence became a tool for enforcing these policies. And the forced removal of Native Americans from their ancestral lands through treaties and military campaigns led to the displacement of many tribes. The infamous Trail of Tears, where thousands of Native Americans were forced to march westward to reservations, is one of the most tragic chapters of this history. The Gold Rush, the catalyst for expansion. The Wild West was truly won with the discovery of gold. Gold rushes, like the one in California in 1848, were the driving forces that accelerated the settlement of the West. When gold was discovered at Sutter's Mill, thousands of fortune seekers known as 49ers flooded the region in search of riches. This influx of people led to the rapid development of mining towns, which were often chaotic and lawless, providing opportunities for gamblers, outlaws, and entrepreneurs alike. The gold rushes spurred the growth of railroads, which were essential for transporting people, goods, and materials across the vast expanses of the country. The Transcontinental Railroad, completed in 1869, was a monumental achievement that connected the East and West, helping to cement the U.S. government's control over the frontier. Railroads not only allowed settlers to travel westward more easily but also facilitated the movement of troops and supplies, playing a key role in the conquest of the West. The lawlessness of the frontier, outlaws and vigilantes. The Wild West is often romanticized as a land where justice was served by quick-drawing lawmen and brave cowboys. But in reality, the frontier was a place of great lawlessness. Many towns, especially during the early days of settlement, lacked established law enforcement, which led to violent shootouts, robberies, and vigilantism. Famous outlaws such as Billy the Kid, Jesse James, and Butch Cassidy became legends due to their criminal exploits, and their stories were sensationalized in the press. But not all was chaotic. Lawmen like Wyatt Earp and Wild Bill Hickok became famous for bringing order to lawless towns, such as Dodge City and Tombstone, with their quick-draw skills and firm hand in dealing with criminals. Vigilante groups also played a role in enforcing justice, often taking matters into their own hands when official law enforcement was absent or ineffective. While these acts of justice were sometimes necessary in the absence of legal systems, they also fueled violence and fear across the frontier. The role of the cowboys and cattle drives. The image of the cowboy, riding across the plains and herding cattle, is central to the mythology of the Wild West. But the reality of cowboy life was far more difficult and dangerous. Cowboys were primarily responsible for driving cattle from ranches to railheads, where the cattle were shipped to markets in the east. The long cattle drives across the plains were grueling and fraught with danger from wild animals, harsh weather, and even Native American resistance. The invention of barbed wire in the 1870s played a significant role in the transformation of the Wild West. It allowed ranchers to fence off their lands, which led to the end of the open range and the decline of the cattle drives. As the frontier was won, large-scale ranching operations took over much of the West, further pushing out Native American tribes and smaller homesteaders. The decline of the Wild West, the end of the frontier. By the late 1800s, the frontier was essentially closed. The U.S. government had established control over most of the land, and the once lawless West began to become more settled and organized. The native tribes, having been forced onto reservations, were no longer a major threat to American settlers. The expansion of railroads, towns, and infrastructure brought the frontier under the influence of established government institutions. The closing of the frontier is often seen as the end of the Wild West era. In 1890, the U.S. Census Bureau declared that the frontier line had disappeared, signaling the end of the period of westward expansion. The legacy of the Wild West, myth vs. reality. While the Wild West was undoubtedly a period of great change and transformation in American history, much of what we know about it today has been shaped by myths and legends. Hollywood movies, dime novels, and sensationalized stories have painted a picture of the Wild West as a romantic, action-packed time of good versus evil. However, the reality was far more complex, filled with struggles over land, resources, and power. The true story of how the Wild West was won involves a combination of government intervention, economic opportunities, violence, and the resilience of the people who lived there. While the American frontier played a crucial role in shaping the United States, it was not without its darker chapters, including the mistreatment of Native Americans and the exploitation of natural resources. Conclusion: the Wild West was won not through one dramatic event, but through a series of complex, interconnected processes involving government policies, economic opportunities, and cultural shifts. It was a time of tremendous change, marked by violence, opportunity, and the relentless pursuit of a better life. As we look back at this iconic era in American history, we're reminded of the challenges and triumphs that shaped the United States. The Wild West was not simply a land of cowboys and outlaws, it was a place where the fate of a nation was decided through conflict, cooperation, and the clash of civilizations.